My dad is a very good griller, so we had some good barbecue for the 4th of July, which was awesome. So, we're just also talking about how the summer is going very fast. I don't know if you guys are feeling that or not. All right. But we have this week and next week left of Upward Bound, and we're getting close to almost about halfway point of the summer here. So usually when I hit July, when I hit about this time, I always kind of think about what is left to do over the summer. What is left for me to do? What do I want to do for the rest of summer? Because definitely in the summer swing now, before we know it, summer is going to be a distant memory. We're going to be back into school in the fall. So what I want you to think about right now is, what do you want to do before the end of your summer? All right. What do you want to do before the end of your summer? Right. Maybe you've started some of those things. Maybe you have put stuff off. What do you hope to do before the end of the summer? All right. So if you want to throw something in the chat, share something with your classmates, something that you hope to do or want to do before going back to school this fall. All right. I'll give you a minute to do that. And then as you do that, you can also read what your classmates are putting as well. What do you hope to do before the end of the summer? All right, if you guys want to type that in the chat, something you hope to do before the end of the summer, and submit. I'm almost done with mine here. Swimming, good. Once you have typed something, if you want to take a look and see what else people have written. All right, eating out and watch the movies. Yes, I agree, Alencia. Swimming, not today maybe, but when it's a little warmer. Finish the books on your book list. I put reading as one of mine too. I want to get into some more reading. Done a little bit, but I want to definitely have a pile of books that I want to start working my way through. Traveling, yes. All right, thank you all for sharing with that. Something that you're hoping to do before the end of the summer. Always good to think about what you want to do coming up. Otherwise, before we know it, we'll blink and we'll be at the end. So it's good to kind of assess yourself with that a little bit and kind of see where you're at. Last time I had you do a free write on something, a lesson that you learned, or something that you learned that you could have written about, that you experienced, that maybe you could write about, or maybe learn from others. Let me look here for a sec. So what I asked you to write about was a lesson that you learned from someone else, either a friend, a family member, a teacher, or a coach, and try to explain what was this lesson and why was it kind of an important lesson for you. So I definitely enjoyed reading through your responses. So I appreciate those of you who did that. I did post some comments. I read those this morning, and I posted some comments for you if you did write those. So if you want to go back into Google Classroom right now and take a minute and you can read my response. If you want to post something back, feel free to do that. Otherwise, I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to take a look at that. If you did not write that free write last week, that is something you can still do, but you can just take a look at the prompt right now, and then we'll talk about that here more in a little bit. So if you want to take a couple minutes, go back into Google Classroom, look at the free write from week 3, and then you can read any comments that I made for you and type up a response if you want. All right, so give you about 2 minutes to do that. Give you about 1 more minute. Again, if any of you have any pets nearby, you can introduce your pet to us. If you'd like to do that, that would be great. I haven't seen Kyle's cat lately. Oh, we're getting Frito, I guess. He's coming, making an appearance. You say hi to the kiddos? You say hi to the kiddos? Oh, you got, huh? All right, Frito says hi. Boop. You will sleep. You're probably tired because that's what dogs do, is they sleep. All right, so if you have a pet you want to share, feel free to turn your camera on and introduce your pet, or just let us see your pet. That would be great. But with your free writes, like I said, I was enjoyed reading your stories about some of the lessons you learned from others, different experiences that you had. And I want to take a minute to share an experience or a story with all of you that was kind of transformational for me. This was when I was in college. Frito's looking like he's going to bark at someone outside. We'll see what happens here. So kind of the scene was I was, I think I was a junior in college at the time. I had made the decision to be an English teacher. So I was taking classes, education classes and English classes. And it was the fall of my junior year. So I enjoyed college. Things were going well. It was hard. It was challenging. It was fun. It was exciting. I met some good friends. Things were going well. And I went back to school fall of my junior year. And at most of my classes, I think all of my classes actually were English classes. I think I had a poetry class, I had a writing class, I had another literature class, maybe one education classes, but most of them were English classes. And it was about halfway through the semester, and I was really getting bombarded with reading and writing papers and doing all this stuff. And I was really starting to get frustrated with how hard I was working on assignments and things, and how I wasn't necessarily doing very well on my grades. So I would read and write these papers, and I'd get them back, and I wouldn't score as high as I wanted to score. I would hope for A's. A lot of times I would get B's. Some classes I would hope for B's and I would get C's. Sometimes even I got D's on some papers. And I remember this class specifically, the professor was pretty challenging, pretty hard. And I worked and spent a lot of time in his class reading, trying to write the perfect paper, trying to write a great paper. And I turned a paper in, and he'd write all these comments on it and I'd get a C- or a D+. And I just remember feeling very deflated and very frustrated by working so hard and not having any success because of it. And so the next paper I wrote for this professor, after the first paper not going so good, I really spent even more time working on it, reworking, asking questions, trying to do the best I could. Turned it in, got it back a week or two later. And I think I got a D+ on it, D as in dog. And I was just devastated. So I remember going to see my advisor, his name was Steve, who was a very positive, easygoing, 65-year-old guy, who was very supportive of me and helpful of conversations I had with him. And we're going in and talking to him, and he had a chair in his office, and I sat down in his chair, and he said, "What's up, Brian?" And I just shook my head. I said, "I don't know what I'm doing." And I showed him my paper, and I showed him I got a D+ on this paper, and he's like, "Ooh, D+." He goes, "That's a tough class, isn't it?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's a really tough class." He goes, I spent a lot of time on this. I worked hard on it. I did this, and I got a D+, and I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm supposed to be an English teacher someday. How am I going to do this? And he looked at me and he put the paper on his desk. He looked at me and goes, "Brian, the teachers or the students that struggle the most usually make the best teachers." And I was like, yes, that's what I needed to hear, because I was definitely struggling. I was lacking confidence. I was lacking, I was frustrated because I was working really hard and it wasn't finding any success. And he very clearly and very directly pointed out to me that sometimes when we fail or when we struggle is when we actually grow and learn the most. And a lot of you guys alluded to that in the fact of in writing of your free writes. Going through challenging times and going through struggles gives you a different perspective, gives you a new perspective, and that can help you out in life. So that is a moment that I will never forget. And I thank Steve Ward for that moment, because that did kind of push me through that challenging semester. And it kept me on the road to doing what I am doing still today, which is being a teacher. So that was pretty cool. Even though at the time it wasn't fun, challenges usually never are at the time, but it was helpful to have that perspective. And I was glad that someone was able to point that out to me. So there are times when we are lacking confidence. There are times when we feel beaten down. And a lot of times there are people around us or people come into our lives to provide that light or that moment, to that clarity to kind of see, make sense of what's going on around us. Sometimes those people are close to us. Sometimes they're people we don't know very well, but those moments do happen. And the important thing is we need to be open and we need to be receptive to those moments as we encounter those in our life. So what Steve reaffirmed to me is, through this lesson is I didn't need to get an A in that class to be the best teacher in the world. And for that matter, I don't need to be the best. Oftentimes in life, I think A lot of times we have this pressure to be the best at something, to be the champion, to win the championship. And sometimes who we are is good enough. All right, we don't have to be the best, but who we are can be good enough. We don't have to be the best rock star or the best person, but we can be a rock star for someone else. And that's kind of important to think about. So today, that kind of leads us to the story that we're going to be looking at. Today, the story is about finding happiness and how to find happiness when maybe we're not the best. All right, so how can we find happiness when we're not at the top of our class? All right, or we're not the first one picked, or we don't win the championship, or we don't win the trophy. All right, how can we still find happiness and success in that even when we're not the best? All right, so we're going to look at a story. It's called Flying Lessons by Simone Tanini. It is in this book that you have been given. All right, it's actually the title of the book. It says Flying Lessons and Other Stories, so it's kind of the title track of the book, so to speak. So this story is basically about a grandmother taking her grandson on a European adventure. All right, and they basically spend a couple weeks going around different places in Europe. But the story is basically set in Barcelona, Spain. All right. So what I want you to do is I want you to find this book. All right. Make sure you have it with you, and look that, have that with you. And if you want to open up to page 135, all right, open up to page 135. All right. So before we do get started reading, what I want you to throw in the chat right now is if you had an opportunity to travel any place in the world, all right, any place in the world. Maybe you've been to this place, maybe you've never been to this place. You could hop on a plane on Friday and go somewhere for a week, maybe two. Where would that place be? All right. So take a minute, throw that in the chat. Where would you go? Go anywhere in the world. Thanks for sharing. Ooh, I was going to say Thailand too. Hard to pick one, I agree. Anyone want to share why you picked the place you did? Anyone want to share with us? You can unmute and share and talk. Good to hear a few more voices. All right, anyone want to share why you picked the place that you did? Okay.
I mean, I'm an advisor, but I'm happy to share to mix up some voices a little bit. I put Norway down as a place that I would like to visit, much because, especially being working with Upward Bound, we work with such a diverse group of students that all their families have done a really great job of connecting their culture into their lives now. And I feel like a lot of my culture for where my great grandparents have come from has been lost, and I would like to go to reconnect with my family's culture.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Kyle. Anyone else want to share? Anyone else?
I can go.
Awesome. Go ahead, Hannah.
Um, One of the reasons is I want to go to Paris is because I like that, like I want to see the Eiffel Tower, and there's a lot of historical stuff, so that's pretty cool. Another reason is that my favorite TV show is in there. It's a cartoon. So, and those places in the show is actually exist in real life. So I want to go there and visit.
Nice. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else want to share? I've been to Paris a couple times. There's a lot to see, but it's also just a great city just to hang out in and just watch the city go by, so to speak. A lot of good food, a lot of beautiful places to visit. All right. Well, let me tell you one quick story here before we get into the book, the story Flying Lessons. So after my first year of teaching, I had the opportunity to go on my own European adventure. All right. So this story, reading the story called Flying Lessons, the fact that it's talks about a grandmother and a grandson going on a European adventure is definitely something I could relate to. Not that I necessarily went with my grandmother, but I actually went with two of my college friends after my first year of teaching. So I saved money throughout the year to try to go on a European adventure so I could learn and experience what kind of travel had to teach me. We flew over to Amsterdam in the Netherlands, and we visited kind of all over as much as we could see in Europe in the time that we were there. All right, so we went to northern France, we went to England, we went to Paris, which is amazing. We went to Switzerland, we went down to Italy, we went back to Germany and the Czech Republic before flying home again from Amsterdam. And it was just an amazing experience. And one of the reasons I really wanted to go on this trip is it really reaffirmed what travel has taught me and why I value travel so much. And it really became one of those moments again that kind of transformed my perspective on life because it really opened my eyes to how powerful travel can be. Opened my eyes to the fact that, wherever we are, whenever you travel, you experience new people, you experience new culture, you experience new practices. And that's exciting, that's new, that's refreshing. And it's very interesting to see how other people are living around the world, what people are experiencing. And you realize that, as different as things can be, a lot of times things aren't very different. And we have a lot more in common than maybe what we think. But we also realize that there are some different things that separate us. We realize that we have a lot in common with our global neighbors. All right, a lot of commonalities. Whether we can speak the same language or not, there's a lot of things that are similar. And we can learn how that other countries may do things differently than we do in our country. And sometimes it's better, sometimes it's not so good, but it's just different. It's not necessarily good or bad or indifferent, but it's just the fact that they approach things differently. And a lot of times we can learn from what other countries do. And it causes us to challenge us to think about how we're doing things in our communities and whether this is the most effective way to handle things. And one thing that I always appreciate about travel too is it really focuses on you to think about what you appreciate at where you are at home, what you love about your home, and maybe what you miss about your home. And also maybe some of the things you don't miss, some of the things that fill your life that maybe you don't really care about. All right. So, like I said, this story is set in Barcelona. Barcelona is one of my favorite places that I've visited in the world. I've been there a couple times. If you ever get a chance, definitely go to Barcelona. Some of you said you wanted to go visit Spain. If you do go to Spain, make sure you check out Barcelona. It's a beautiful city. Unfortunately, that's really the only city I've been in Spain is Barcelona, so I can't speak to the rest of Spain. But it's definitely my list to go back to Spain and see some of the other places. Hang on one sec.
Keep it down, Frito.
All right, Frito's done barking at the window, I think, for now. We'll see. All right, so if you will open your books to page 135, it's a story called Flying Lessons. We're gonna read some of this out loud like we did last time, and then I'm gonna have you finish and read some of it on your own at the end. And then just like last time, I am gonna give you a free write. I'm gonna give you actually 2 prompts to write about at the end. And then I'll have you turn those in before the end of the day. All right. So this book called Flying Lessons. All right, this story called Flying Lessons. Nana wears a fur coat to the beach. It's my second clue she doesn't plan to go swimming. The first came early this morning when she rang up the Chanel boutique at the Pasige de Garcia and asked them to send a selection of swim trunks for a young boy of 12 with practically no hips and a small bottom to room 213 at the Palencia, Barcelona. Half asleep, I slid up in bed, swallowed in a voluminous white robe monogrammed with the hotel's initials, and peered up at my grandmother. Posed imperiously at the window, she was already done up in a matador red chiffon dress, her dyed caramel hair teased into a beehive, her brown eyes drenched in the blue mascara, and her lips coated with color. I could hear the Chanel clerk through the handset, trying to get a word in, but Nana was prancing away. Something stylish and sophisticated, of course. Whatever those chicas are wearing in Ibiza, she breathed, unaware of how ludicrous Spanglish sounded in an Indian accent. Though nothing in black, only Italians wear black to swim. Aren't you getting a bathing suit too? I started, but Nana waved me off, gypsy jangling in her waist. On the bed table, there were a gilded tray of 2 cafes, con leche, ham and cheese croissants, tostados slathered in tomatoes and olive oil. Anna's coffee cup was already drained. And please be rapido about it, she was saying. It's my grandson's first trip out of Florida. I can't have him spending the entire day in the hotel. Through the phone, I heard the clerk huffing into Chanel doesn't carry men's clothes, let alone swim trunks, let alone deliver them to tourists at hotels. But Nana simply smiled like a cat. Tell Armando that Camelia Sani says hello, she replied and hung up the phone. 3 hours later, I'm chasing Nana across the sun-drenched shores of the La Mar Bella, wearing a striped Chanel red and white swimsuit so tiny and tight, I keep peeking down to make sure it's still there. While Nana sweeps across the golden sand in her courture dress and red stiletto heels and a white fur coat that makes her look like the Indian version of Cruella de Vil. You promised to take me to the beach, I yell, and I am. You didn't say anything about staying with you, Nanny calls, shielded by enormous Palermo Picasso sunglasses. But I don't know anyone here, and my Spanish is terrible. You can't leave me in the middle of nowhere all alone. It's a beach, not an alleyway, on the La Ramblas. I'm just getting a wash and blow at the Rosetta Ferretti and meeting an old acquaintance at the Cafe Gijon. I won't be more than a few hours. A few hours? What do you expect me to do with a few hours? What any boy your age would do on a beach in Spain. Make friends. She impels as we approach a crowded inlet. Here we are. Yamelo at the hotel told me this is where the most exclusive people go. I can feel the bodies around me, but I can't bear to look at them. Please don't leave me alone. I'll come with you. But she's already sashaying away. Making friends is easy. I do it all the time. Heart hammering, I glanced up at the packed beach. Finally seeing the people around me, my stomach implodes. Grandma, I cry. She turns on her heel, alarmed. They're naked, I scream. You brought me to a naked beach. Nana gaps at me, then raises her eyes and pulls down the sunglasses. She takes in the sea of bodies. Her almond skin blanches, tight wrinkled, creasing her forehead. She's caught in a trap. But then her eyes float down to me, quivering in my Speedo like a spooked starlet, and she pulls up her sunglasses with a stern smile. Oh, my little darling, you have such an imagination. She coos and glides away without looking back. All right, so grandmother is leaving our narrator, 12-year-old boy, on a beach in Barcelona all by himself. And the only thing she tells him is she wants him to make friends. All right, wants him to make friends. All right. My question for you, how do you feel when you are alone and you don't know anyone? All right, our narrator, character by the name of Santosh, is dropped off at this beach where he doesn't know anyone. He is in a foreign country and he feels very alone. And his grandma is basically abandoning him here for a couple hours while she goes and meets someone and runs some errands. All right. How do you feel when you are alone? All right. Maybe it's the first day of class when you walk in and you're the first person there or the last person there and you don't know anyone in the classroom. Maybe it's the first day at the job. Okay. You're at a job, you don't know anyone who you're working with. Maybe you join a club or a sport or an activity, you don't know anyone else. How do you feel when you're alone and you don't know anyone else? All right. Or maybe you're put on a beach in a foreign country, like our narrator is. All right. Think about that for a minute and then take a minute and throw an idea or a thought in the chat. How do you feel when you are alone and you don't know anyone else? Is that comforting? Is that uncomfortable? Type some type of comment in the chat. Thanks for your responses. Wait for a couple more of you here. How do you feel when you go somewhere where you are alone or you don't know anyone else? So a lot of you have mentioned a lot of different situations. Sometimes it's, you know, when you go into a store and you don't know anyone, if you're going there to buy something or to look at something, and maybe you get more comfortable with that because everyone's kind of there doing what they do. But in the class, in the situation like when you're in a class, it might be different because you know you're going to be there to interact or to get to know these people a little bit. I think a lot of times we feel awkward or anxious in these situations, but these are definitely situations that we face in life all the time. All right. And for me, I put self-conscious. I feel sometimes like people are looking at me. And that happens sometimes, but a lot of times I feel kind of content and okay in those situations as well. And I've learned to feel that way because, you know, based on my job as a teacher, I walk into classrooms all the time where I don't necessarily know people. And then my job is to try to get people and help people get to know each other and to interact and to work together in a classroom situation. So through those experiences, I've became more comfortable and more confident in those situations. But sometimes I do still feel self-conscious and I'm concerned about what people think. All right. But with being alone, the reality is a lot of times this is something that we're going to experience a lot in life. Where we are going to be in situations where we're going to not know anyone. Okay. And we're going to be forced to kind of deal with that. For me, I think one time when this really hit me was when I went to college. And when you go to college, you don't really know people who are there. You don't know your roommates, who they are. You don't know people in your classes. And when you go to college, you experience a lot of news and you start to get comfortable not knowing a lot of people. All right. And you grow more comfortable with that and you build confidence in working through those kind of challenges in those situations. So if it is something that you're anxious or you feel worried about now, realizing that each time you do that, it does get a little bit easier. And it is a skill that's important kind of for you to develop. All right. So let's see here. We're on page 138. I'm going to keep reading here. Read the next section here for you. Nana never asked if I wanted to go on this trip. She just flounced it in our kitchen at 8 a.m. on a scorching June morning, wearing a deer sweatsuit, drinking a power green juice, and extolling the virtues of pilots before informing my mother she was taking me on a 3-week trip across Europe, and that I'd need a passport, a haircut, and a new wardrobe that wasn't from Old Navy. She never addressed my 2 brothers who were eating breakfast with me, nor explained to me why I was the one chosen for this foreign tour, nor allowed my mother to say a say in the matter. She just drained her juice, gave our plates of soggy French toast a pitying glare, and jaunted out of the house. Less than a month later, I'm alone on a naked beach. When we started this trip, I thought it would be packed itinerary of cultural landmarks, guided ferries down the Thames, tours of the Prado and the Eiffel Tower, afternoon tea at the Dutch Braziers, while I got ahead of my summer reading for school. Instead, I haven't seen a single museum or a palace or anything else we learned about in Miss Fisher's class, and I'm pretty sure Nana secretly threw out my summer reading books during a customs search in Copenhagen. In Berlin, she left me stranded in the middle of a dodgy parade. In Marsala, she paid a fast-talking young cab driver named Gao to take me out with his wild teenage friends while she shopped for shoes. And yesterday, on our first night in Spain, I dressed up in a suit and combed my hair so I could look nice for the theater, only to end up cowering in the front row of an adults-only burlesque show. Why can't I have a normal grandmother? Why is every second of this trip a walk off the gangplank? Nanny returned to the beach 4 hours later in a completely new dress and a hairstyle and finds me hiding in a dank, foul-smelling cave. Knees balled to my chest. Have you really been here the whole time? She frowns. This is pointless, I mumble. All of this is pointless. It's true, Nana sighs, eyeing my new swimsuit. If I knew you'd spend the whole day in the dark, you could have worn your underpants instead. I gave her the silent treatment all the way back to the hotel. Did you take Mom away to even 2 when she was young? I asked, later struggling to crack a stone crab at dinner. Your mother is like your grandfather, Nana says vaguely, already finished a shelling and eating hers. What's that mean? I asked, trying to keep the slippery crab in the silver cracker. They'd rather stay home and do work. Yeah, but that's how they both make money. And that's what they do with it. And what do they do with it? Nanny fires. Your mother hoards every dime as if she'll live forever. Your grandfather hasn't taken me to a movie or dinner or show or anywhere else in 15 years. We're old now, he says. We're old. But he lets you spend as much money as you want. Money, she pounces. What good is money to a bird in a cage? Her eyes glow with emotion for the first time. I can't find Nana inside of them. Slowly, her gaze softens. Her hands unclench. Santosh, sweetie, you really sat there in the dark cave the whole afternoon. What was I supposed to do? Enjoy the scenery? By the time I came back to the beach was teeming with families, says Nanny, taking the big swigs of champagne. You were so busy worrying about the naked aunties that you didn't notice all the kids your age running around, looking as friendly as could be. All right, we're going to stop there for a minute. All right. So what what Nanny or grandmother wanted her grandson to experience on the beach was she wanted him to go and make some friends, to have some human interaction, to meet some people and talk to some people, which for some of us is very easy, for some of us is not so easy. All of us feel kind of awkward and uncomfortable in situations where we don't know a lot of people, but it's part of trying to meet new people and trying to make that and form those human connections that are so important. And that's what this grandmother really wants for her grandson. That's why she decided to leave him on this beach, was hopefully he would go talk to some people and he would interact with some people. And that's what she wanted him to do. Yet he didn't do that. She also talks about how, what good is money to a bird in a cage? I'm referring to the idea that if you have all the money in the world, but you feel trapped with that, how good is that? So brings up the idea about whether or not being caged by something or by being held back by something is worthwhile. Basically, she's trying to argue that human connection maybe is more important than having money. All right. That having human connection or human relationships with others, whether it's friendships, family, other people, maybe is equally as important or maybe even more important than having all the money in the world. All right. It'd be nice to have both, in my opinion. But she's trying to teach her grandson the importance of human connection and having those human relationships. All right. So how do you value money versus human connection? All right. Do you think money is more important than human connection? Do you think human connection is more important than money? Do you think they're both the same? All right. What I want you to do in the chat is just throw in there, what do you value in your life right now? All right. Do you value both human connection and money? Do you think one is more important than the other? All right. So your options are money, human connection, or both. All right. What do you value in your life? All right. Take a minute and throw that in the chat and let's see what people are thinking. All right, thanks for the responses. All right. So obviously a lot of you signified both of these things being important. Clearly grandmother is trying to teach our narrator here about the importance of human connection. All right, and clearly it seems like grandmother has money. So if she has money, obviously human connection is equally as important as having that money. But I think we would all agree that both are important, and obviously it's hard to human connection is there, but if we are struggling with money, that is definitely brings a whole different level of stress. Continuing on page 141 here. I give up on the crab. Can't we just visit the Basilica of Sagrada like other Americans? Puts down her glass. You know why I brought you on this trip, Santosh? So you could get away from Grandpa? She lets out a cackle. No, well, yes, but no. I brought you on this trip because you win too many awards at school. I stare at her blankly. What? Best in math, best in English, best in debate, history and science and chorus. How many awards can you win? Every year I come to the ceremony and watch you go back and forth to the stage, picking up all the trophies and making me and your mother carry them because there are too many for you to hold. Anna, I say, losing patience, what does winning awards have to do with anything? Because when you're older, no one cares how many awards you win. Santosh, people care if you have something to talk about. And right now, all you have to talk about are things from books. My cheeks are hot. I'm pretty sure that my Nana, my 69-year-old grandmother, is calling me a nerd. Not just a nerd, but a nerd who doesn't have a life, who has no friends, who is a complete and total loser. The cool boys at school taught me the same way, with their perfect faces and athletic bodies and 20/20 eyes. But it doesn't matter what they say because every year at the last assembly, they and their parents have to sit there and watch me win every single last award while they wear nothing, nada, zilch. And they'll continue to watch me win every last award until senior year. When I'm a valedictorian and I go to Harvard and I have a real life while they look back and realize that I was a cool kid all along and they were the losers. So for Nana, the one person I look up to more than anyone in this world, the one person who is supposed to love me unconditionally, to now say that same thing as the hot boys at the school, she sees it in my face. I used to love seeing you win all those awards, Santosh. I love seeing you and your mother happy, she says softly. But now when you win, you don't smile anymore. The more you win, the less happy you look. Heat rips through me and I turn away. I'll be happy when I go home from this trip. A long pause stretches between us and I can feel my jaw clamp shut. Nana's hand gently touches mine. Santosh, all I'm asking you the last 2 days of our trip is I want you to forget about the books and the trophies in school. You don't know me, okay? I retort, but my voice fades as I say it. And for once, Natty lets me piddle without my crab in silence. All right, I'm gonna stop right there. So the lesson that Nanny is trying to teach here is the fact that being successful and being the best and whatever it is that being the best at is, doesn't necessarily always lead to happiness. And as she has observed in Santosh, her grandson, that the more he wins, the less happy he seems to become. So sometimes we get so consumed about winning or being the best that we forget the meaning behind it. All right. So she's trying to teach him to forget about being and having and being so focused on being the best. All right. So I think many of us have set out to be the best at something before. Maybe it's an activity, maybe it's in a class you want to do really well. Maybe it's something else. But the reality is, in any type of competition, there's one champion and a bunch of other people who are trying to be the best. All right. I told you last time I like basketball. I'm a basketball fan. The NBA Finals started last night. Phoenix Suns and the Milwaukee Bucks are playing for the NBA championship. I am a not a diehard, but I am a Timberwolves fan. And I just think about the day when the Timberwolves will be in the NBA Finals, which probably will never happen, but maybe it will. But every year, every team has that goal of being the champion. All right. And right now, 2 teams are fighting to be the champion. But at the end of the season, only one team gets there. All right. So, and what the grandmother's trying to teach here is that not, being the best is great, but it's not the only thing to success and happiness. All right. So we left off on page 143 in the break there. It says, the next day I asked to go to the beach. All right. So Our narrator is going to go back to the beach and maybe perhaps meet and talk to some of the kids who are there. So what I want you to do here is I want you to read the rest of this story. I'm going to give you about 15 minutes to do that. All right, we left off on page 143. All right, and then we'll come back and talk about a couple things at that point, and then I'm going to give you a couple things to write about. All right, so let me type that in the chat. You can start reading right now, and then we will come back and talk about that in about 15 minutes. All right. Can I get any waves or is anyone there? There's a wave, good. Any other waves, any other claps? Good. All right. Hopefully you're able to finish the story. If not, you can finish it here in a couple minutes. But just one thing I wanted to talk about, and then I'm going to give you a little time to do a little writing. I'm going to give you 2 free writing prompts. I'm looking for a paragraph on each of those. We'll talk about those here in a second. But at the end here, our narrator actually does achieve and try to make a friend in Tomas, and does talk to someone on the beach and becomes friends with them. On page 156, the very second to last page, he says, hasta mañana. And grandmother says, hasta mañana, patting Tomas's back as she pulls off to him. And this is the last day that they are in Spain, and the grandmother kind of misleadingly tells Tomas that that Santosh could be at the beach tomorrow, which obviously they're leaving, so that's not going to be true. And Santosh says this, why did you lie to him? I turned to Nana. Why did you tell him I'd see him tomorrow? The mischief evaporates from her face. Instead, there's a veil of sadness, as if I've woken her from a beautiful dream. Nana doesn't look vibrant and carefree anymore. She looks old. To give him something to look forward to, Santosh, she says quietly, before gazing out at the sea. All of us need something to look forward to. I nestle into her arms as we watch the crash and spray of waves. Her arms are so warm and I don't want her to let her go. Will you take me on another trip next year, Nana? I ask, tight with emotion. Oh, Santosh, don't you see, she whispers, glassing with tears. You're the one taking me. For a moment, I don't understand, and yet somewhere in my heart I do. We're the same, Nana and I, 2 caged birds searching for a way out. Shouldn't leave it behind, she says, nodding at the cup of half-melted ice cream in the sand next to me. The surface glints in the sun, dark as an emerald, as a forest. It's the same color as Tomas's eyes. Go on then, I hear Nana whisper. I slip a spoonful into my mouth, and sweetness and tartness ride inside me, lighting my heart on fire. Gasping, I turn back. Banana's gone, and for a second, I look up, thinking she's flown away. All right, so I really like the line where she says, all of us need something to look forward to. All right, all of us need something to look forward to. And if you look at Google Classroom, I posted a free write for you. And there are 2 prompts. And again, what I would like you to do is give me a good paragraph for each of those prompts. All right, if you want to write more, that's great. If you don't want to write more, if you want to just give me a paragraph for each of those 2 prompts, that would be great. And then I would like you to turn that in by the end of the day today. All right, so the first prompt, it says, Nana tried to teach Santosh an important lesson of how it is important it is in life to have something to look forward to, even if it is something that won't come to be. Do you agree with this line of thinking, that it's important to have something to look forward to? And what ways do you think this is an important lesson for you in your life, and how might this outlook help you in the future? Try and give me a good paragraph or 2. And then the second prompt is she tries to teach Santosh about how success will not always lead to happiness. All right, do you think success will lead to happiness in your life? How have you seen this play out thus far in your life? All right, again, looking for a paragraph or two. You can type that up and just turn that in. If you'd rather handwrite it, you can do that and take a picture of that as well. All right, but just like last time, whatever you write, I will read through those, give you some comments on those before we get together next week, which will be our last time that we will be getting together, all right, for English class. So that is all I have. Does anyone have any questions before I give it to Malik to do some prizes, or unless Kyle's doing prizes? You don't have any questions? All right, if you do, you can throw them in the chats. Otherwise, Kyle, if you want to do the daily prizes.
I think Molly's the one that's been taking care of these.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Molly, you're up.
Melissa, can you pull it up, please? The
Yep.
prize pictures. Okay. And so the first winner for today is Jimmy. The second winner is Lily. Third winner is Miret. Fourth winner is Paige. Last winner is Amanda. Again, today's daily winners are Jimmy, Lily, Miret, Paige, and Amanda. Please send me what you would like along with your full address.
Awesome. All right, so what I have for you is I have you those 2 free writes I want you guys to write on. If you do that by the end of today, spend 5-10 minutes on each one, and then turn that in. I'll give you some comments for next time, and I'll be with you next Thursday. All right, so feel free to stay on if you have any questions. Otherwise, have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next week.